Whilst browsing eBay the other day, I came across this. No, not the pizza knife, this. It cost me a whopping £12 including shipping, which is a far cry from the £199 or so I originally paid back when the device was launched. We are of course today talking about the original Apple TV, and since Apple has recently announced the introduction of the 6th generation, I thought it might be fun to go back and see where this device's roots are from. Here we can see the Apple TV. It's much larger than later generations, and this is due to what's inside. When launched in 2007, Apple probably had designs for their own ARM SoCs already drawn up, but it would be a few years until the launch of the original iPad and the iPhone 4 that would use the much smaller A4 SoC. That meant Apple would have to use commodity off-the-shelf PC hardware to build this device, such as a 2.5-inch IDE hard drive, thus necessitating a case of this size. There is no power switch, and the power supply is internal, so plugging it in immediately sets the system booting. It's not the fastest thing in the world, as it has to load a custom version of macOS X Tiger off the aforementioned hard drive. Originally designed as an iPod for your TV of sorts, it was supposed to allow you to sync content from your Mac or PC so it could be enjoyed on your large widescreen TV. Streaming wasn't really a thing yet, so content like movies or music had to be purchased from the iTunes store. Rentals came later. Apple got sued from an artist who had a strikingly similar video to the one that's played at Startup, so I hope he doesn't watch my channel. This Apple TV is running the original version 1.0 of the software, and although it supports TVs with a 1080i resolution, the playback of video was limited to 720p. Unfortunately, none of the things that require connection to the iTunes store work, so here's the built-in screensaver. The problem with the syncing concept is it's not really what people wanted to do, as Apple later found out. When you turn on your Apple TV, you simply want to watch something and don't want to worry about downloading it on some device first and then syncing it over. It was a bit clumsy, really. 3 different major updates were released over the lifespan of the product, designed to make it easier to use and doing away with the whole syncing concept entirely, with their Take-Two software release. Whilst you could still sync from iTunes if you wanted, you could now make purchases or rentals directly through the iTunes store on the Apple TV itself. You could of course put your own content on, provided it was only 720p and used the right audio and video codec. As time went on, a group of people began tinkering and wondered if it would be possible to add additional functionality to what was originally included, such as XBMC, or to replace the operating system entirely. A version of Linux was released and some clever people even got a full macOS X up and running. We used to use our Apple TV a lot, so I never really wanted to fiddle in case I messed something up, but for £12 I thought I'd finally give it a go. To my surprise, it's not terribly difficult. I grabbed a spare IDE hard drive I had laying around and plugged it into my Mac Mini. I did a macOS X 10.4.6 install and then updated to 10.4.8. I don't believe the last update released for Tiger worked correctly, but Leopard and Snow Leopard are known to run, albeit with no hardware acceleration. Once you've installed macOS X, reboot and copy some files over, then transfer the drive directly into the Apple TV. The processor is a 1GHz Intel Pentium M derivative, so you'll not be wanting to use it to mine Bitcoin or Ethereum. It does take its time booting to the desktop, so some patience is required. The speed issue is also compounded by the fact that there's only 256MB of RAM, and that's not upgradable due to it being soldered directly to the system board. This means that even with nothing open after a fresh boot, you are only left with about 25MB of RAM. When you open up another app, the system slows down due to paging to the hard drive. The hard drive is only a 4200 RPM drive, so this is to be expected. The original OS is very stripped down and ran an interface called Front Row. The majority of the other macOS X applications and services aren't included. Wi-Fi for me worked out of the box, but I could only connect it to my older WEP-encrypted Wi-Fi network, as I couldn't choose any other encryption options. But this network is fine and got me online browsing basic websites such as 68k.news or FrogFind, and of course Mac84's website loads the retro page fine, but anything else just doesn't render properly, or you're prompted to trust certificates like they're going out of fashion. As I have network connectivity, connecting to other devices on the network is just as easy as if this were a proper Mac. Here I connected to my Mac Mini, which I use as a bridge to get software on and off my old machines. I was hoping to run CPU-X, which is a sort of CPU-Z clone, to see if I could find out more information on the processor, but unfortunately it crashes on startup. But what I have found though is it's based on the codename Pentium M called Dothan, due to the 400 MHz front-side bus. The CPU is also paired with a GeForce Go 7300 GPU with 64 MB of VRAM, which handles all the video and is likely used to help accelerate the H.264 video decoding. You do on occasion hear the click of the hard drive, and this thing gets toasty warm even when sitting idle. The top of the Apple TV is actually a heatsink and is used to dissipate heat from the CPU, the GPU and the chipset, and there's a small fan present in the system which doesn't directly cool the heatsink but indirectly moves air around the upper surface of the unit but is never really audible. So what can you use it for in 2021? Well, the original Apple TV OS doesn't connect to anything these days. Apple has long since discontinued services for it, and macOS 10 Tiger has been superseded by no less than 12 versions since it was released. Modern apps and games won't load, and there's also no traditional BIOS, so you can't install things like Windows XP. You might have more luck with Linux, or perhaps using it as a headless file server with some external storage hooked up, although there's only 10100 Ethernet available, or perhaps a torrenting machine, if torrents are still a thing these days. Aside from that, I can't really think of a must-have reason to have, but at this price, it's helped me pass the time on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.